Hey, and welcome to the highlights of episode number 233 with Andy Mant. Now, some of my favorite parts of this episode were when he shares with us the difference between good and toxic blue light. This is really important to know. I also loved it when he talks about the common sources of blue light that we're exposed to every day and what we can do about it, and how blue light is impacting our health, sleep, energy levels, hormones, and more, and how to mitigate the damage caused by blue light and the hacks that we can implement into our life today. But there is so much more inspiration and knowledge in the full episode. So to listen to the full podcast and get all the info in the show notes, head on over to melissaambrosini.com/233 right now. Welcome, Andy. I'm so excited to have you on the show. But before we dive into that, can you tell us your story and tell us how you got to where you are today, how BLUblox came about? Like, where did it all begin for you?
Yeah, absolutely. So as everyone can probably tell by my accent, even though I'm in Australia and have been for the last decade, very much British. So about 10 years ago, 12 years ago, I was living in the UK and I was your sort of standard run-of-the-mill person that knew nothing about health or wellness. And it got to a point where my health really deteriorated. And I had things like, kidney stones, for instance, when I was in my mid-20s, and appendicitis and things that really you shouldn't be getting until, you're a lot older. And I went down a rabbit hole and started to look at nutrition and exercise. I started going to the gym and eating what I thought was right. And, eventually I just found that it just wasn't working for me. And then I discovered a lot of information on light. I discovered Jack Kruse about 10 years ago and a few other people as well. Bill Lagerkos is another really good resource on circadian biology. And I was starting to piece things together thinking like, why do so many people diet and fail? And is there something more to this? And that sent me down the path and a deep dive into looking at light and how to manage light for optimal health. What happened was I started to clean up my light hygiene. Okay. So I was still exercising. I was still, stripping back my diet and keeping very healthy in that way. Because there's never one sort of size fits all, one thing that's going to change everything. There's always a multitude of different factors. After that, just started to feel like I had more and more energy. And what sort of led me to found my company, BLUblox, which is actually a blue blocking eyewear company, is that when I started to look at the blue light glasses that were available, which are used during the day to filter some blue light to stop digital eye strain and macular degeneration, but most importantly, to be worn after dark to help with sleep and hormone resetting and secretion optimally. I found that when I looked at the academic literature and some of the things that Jack and Bill were saying about light, it didn't add up. And when we tested sort of other brands of blue light glasses, they weren't actually blocking what the literature said you should block or filter. So we actually decided to look into this a little bit further, which led us to find that every other company seemed to buy these glasses in from China and then just sell them as this sort of generic fix, not knowing anything about the science. So we decided to found BLUblox as an evidence-based and evidence-backed company that would educate people on, I guess, how to manage your light environment for optimal health, wellness, and hormones, but also create products here in Australia, so not outsourced anywhere overseas, so we could have complete control over the manufacturing process and the science that is going into these lenses.
Awesome. So for someone listening who's like, blue light, what the hell is this guy talking about? Can you chat to us about what blue light is and why it's both good and bad?
Blue light during the day from a natural source like the sun is actually very optimal for us. So in the mornings when we go outside, we wake up and we're exposed to light. The blue light in the sun actually tells our body that it's morning and we need to be alert and we need to be awake. And we secrete specific hormones at that time of the day, such as cortisol. Some people misinterpret that, and context applies again here as the stress hormone. But it's very important early in the day to get you, jumpstart you basically into your day. Now, The problem lies here in artificial light, okay? So in the sun, it's a very balanced spectrum of lights. You've got your violets, your blues, yellows, reds, oranges. Think of a rainbow. So when it rains in the sun, you can see all the colors that the sun is emitting. Now, if you did that same test with a light bulb, so an LED or fluorescent light that's, say, in your house, maybe in an LED backlit digital device such as your smartphone, your laptop computer, in maybe car headlights, street lamps. When you open your fridge, there's a light in there, or appliances. TVs, exactly that. Appliances like dishwasher will have lights on. When you actually test the light that's emitted from all of those devices, it doesn't come close to matching the sun. So it's very, very high in the blue range, but very, very low in the red range. Now, why that's so important during the day, and also at night as well to some extent, is that blue, even in the sun, causes damage to the cells in the eyes, okay? Now, nature is very, very clever, Melissa. It always puts an antidote to the poison. Now, the good side of blue is obviously to make you feel energetic and jumpstart the day, but it's damaging cells in your eyes. Now, red light, as a contrast, is actually a restorative frequency of light, and it's very much in balance with blue in the sun. So any cell damage that's caused during the day from the blue light in the sun is actually repaired and restored through the red light that's in that same light source. Now, the difference with artificial light is it contains next to no restorative red light. So we're exposing ourselves to blue light. We're causing cell damage in our eyes, but we're not actually giving the antidote to that damage, which is the red light. So that's where there's a big problem during the day. And this is why we're seeing things like macular degeneration and digital eye strain, migraine headaches and tension headaches on the increase, because these lights are not created equal. Now, blue light also has another issue after dark. So I mentioned a few minutes ago that when we're actually outside during the day, our body starts creating serotonin. And later on in the evening, serotonin and something called tryptophan actually mix together and they form something called melatonin. Okay. Now, melatonin is, number one, is the sleep hormone, and two, is a powerful antioxidant. Now, the reaction between tryptophan and serotonin can only happen in the absence of blue and green light. So basically in physiological darkness. So what I mean by physiological darkness is our ancestors would have had access to fire. So they would have had access to orange, red and yellow light after dark. Whereas we're actually exposing ourselves to blue and green light after dark because of all those devices, TV and lights that I've mentioned. So this down-regulates the production of melatonin, which makes it harder for us to fall asleep, doesn't give us the quality of REM and restorative deep sleep that we need, and actually causes us to feel perpetually tired, basically, because we're waking up, grouchy, and it's disrupting something called our circadian rhythms.
Yeah, it's not good, is it?
No, definitely not. So we've got to look at ways at basically managing our light environment to, allow for optimal hormones. So what we need to do is, a couple of good hacks that I can share with your listeners that I've done is I took myself off to Bunnings and I bought myself some red light bulbs, which I replaced in a few of the lamps in the house, and they don't emit any blue light, which is great. Now, you can use LED lights that are red. There's obviously an issue with flicker on those types of light, but that's probably a different conversation. But initially, you want to be eliminating the blue. And by doing that, you need to buy bulbs that are basically red. But what I found was halogen lights from Bunnings were the best. And they lasted for many hours and they weren't LED and they only emitted red light. So you just have this calming sort of, light environment after dark, which was really good. And another obviously very important hack is making sure that no blue light is passing through your eyes. So for instance, like we mentioned earlier, your phone, your TV, etc., or your laptop. So after dark, you need to be wearing blue light blocking glasses. And I know that, I alluded to the fact earlier that there's a lot of brands out there that I guess offer this type of lens, but not to the same effect that it blocks 100% of blue and green light after dark, like the brand that we've created. So yeah, you just got to make sure that, your light hygiene is managed, after dark. And, that brings us back as well during the day. So, there's some hacks here to improve your light management during the day as well. You don't want to be blocking blue light during the day. You want to be filtering it down. So as we mentioned earlier, the light in LED and fluorescent lighting is very high in blue, but we still need blue to function, just not as much as basically is in those lights. So you need to be, dimming the lux, which is the light intensity on your computer monitors. So there's other hacks you can do as well. Like I have a salt lamp next to my computer as well for during the day, which brings down, and balances out the blue. There's a free program called Flux that you can put on your computer screen that takes a lot of the blue light out. But I guess a lot of the misconception about some of these programs you can put on your digital devices, I guess like night shift mode for your iPhone as well, is that, these are great hacks for during the day. But as I was alluding to earlier, during the evening, you need to completely block the blue and the green, and those apps just don't hack it. So you've got to ensure that, you're wearing eye protection as well. And that really brings me on to another point, which is a hormonal disorder that's actually affecting a lot more women than it is men, and that's thyroid problems. Okay. When the thyroid is exposed to blue light chronically, so during the day and during the night when you get home and you're watching your TV, or during the day when you're sat very close to a monitor screen, the thyroid gland is actually only a few millimeters beneath the surface of the skin and also contains melanopsin receptors in them as well. So it seems to affect women a lot more than men. And I know that women statistically have a harder time sleeping than men as well, which makes it all the more important to manage your light environment. So the thyroid needs both light and darkness. It needs light to stimulate and it needs darkness to rest and repair. And the fact that we're not allowing our thyroid to rest and repair is causing many, many issues, especially for women. Look at your environment and look at what made you sick, as opposed to I've got a sickness and, let's take some pills to try and protect against it. So yeah, it's sad to see.
It really is, like the hormone and the thyroid issues that are so common and the autoimmune issues that are just on the rise. It's really sad. And I just want everybody listening to take this light pollution as another piece of this holistic puzzle. Yes, keep exercising, keep nourishing your body, surround yourself with healthy and non-toxic relationships, get outside as much as you can, do work that is meaningful to you, but also look at your exposure to light and toxic light and how you can fix that within your own home and in your office, because it will make such a big difference. And I always say it's the little things that you do each day that add up to big results or big consequences.
Absolutely. And I think, again, light management will put you in a very calm and relaxed state of mind post sunset where, you can really do a good level of meditation and manifestation and be able to actually realize and manifest what you want as well. So, comes down to creating an environment that is, optimal for what you want to achieve. And I think as well, going back to your mum and the night shift, it's really sad because some of the greatest people that, basically give all their lives to helping others, such as your mum in the hospital, firemen as well. My dad was a fireman and had to work night shifts as well. You need to be wearing yellow lens during the night shift. This will take out a hell of a lot of the blue and keep your cortisol levels as low as possible without having them really low that you're not going to feel energetic during the day. To also get regular breaks away from artificial blue light and in a room where there is a lot of red light. So maybe a little Zen area where there'd be a Himalayan salt lamp or maybe a near infrared device that you could sort of shine on yourself. I would also say to her that 2 hours before her shift that she should switch out her blue light reducing glasses, the yellow lenses, and switch over to the BLUblox red Sleep Plus lenses, because this will then prepare her body to think that her nighttime is then coming in 2 to 3 hours. And then she can, drift off into a better sleep. It would never be optimal for night shift workers, unfortunately, but a better sleep for when she sleeps during her day. And I would also give her a tip that, light is, 90% the entrainer of most of our clocks in our body, but also exercise and food entrain some of our peripheral clocks in some of our cells. So I would say to her 2 to 3 hours before you go, actually probably 3 to 4 hours before you want to go to bed, don't eat anything, don't drink anything. You don't want your body digesting food, which will impair with getting your body into restorative REM and deep sleep. And I would say to her, exercise before your shift starts to give you that energy and that boost for going into your shift, but don't exercise after your shift or during it. So, there's definite ways to alleviate some of the negativity of or negative consequences, of night shift work. But ultimately, it is a very difficult situation for these people to get well if they are sick and working in this environment. You can improve it, but you can never get fully better. It's a saying from Jack Kruse that you cannot get better in the same environment that made you sick.
As you were talking, something just clicked within me. I did night shift for an entire year. So I was a dancer at the Moulin Rouge in Paris, and we went to work at 6 p.m. and I left at around 2 a.m. That was the most unhealthy I have ever been in my life. I was 8 kilos heavier than I am now. It goes into, it's part of that puzzle. I wasn't eating as well as I am now. Yes, I was exercising, but, the environment that I was in, it wasn't as healthy as I am now. But it's so interesting that reflecting back, that year was one of the most unhealthiest years I've ever had.
Yeah, absolutely. And I'll tell you exactly why and what light did to you and messing up your circadian rhythm. It was 3 factors. So melatonin, what I spoke about earlier was how do you produce melatonin in the absence of blue light after dark? So the fact that you were working after dark meant less melatonin, which meant less sort of the antidote to any of the inflammation that was being caused in your body. Now, the second factor that would have influenced you would have been the lack of quality restorative sleep. So if you fight that urge through, say, staying up and not going to bed like you were, or drinking caffeine, which is a potent adenosine receptor blocker, you don't get the adequate REM and deep sleep that you need to clear out all of that waste product. And that makes you feel very foggy, okay? And over time, that fogginess, if left unchecked, can turn into things like neurological problems, like you could have memory loss and things like that. Now, the fact that you weren't obviously getting optimal sleep would have also led to 2 hormones in your body being left unchecked. And this has been, again, shown very clearly in the literature. The 2 hormones are leptin and insulin, okay? So working probably under lights and working during the dark under those lights would have led to an impairment in your blood glucose level, which would have sent you into that sort of crash sort of cycle where you need to eat and you get cravings for specific foods. And because of the insulin levels being so high, you typically would reach for foods that would be perhaps higher in carbohydrate and fat in combination as well, because your body needs that to bring down the blood glucose levels and crash and bring out the insulin.
Okay, let's shift gears now. If you had a magic wand and could put one book in the school curriculum of every high school around the world, what book would you choose?
For me, look, I would really recommend Jack Kruse's book. I think the Paleo FX, it's called, is really good. He talks about food, he talks about light, he talks about, how to live in an optimal environment as opposed to sort of targeting on one thing. And it's funny because Jack is a very complex and scientific speaker, yet his book is very, very digestible and readable. And I would say that would probably be the first book that I would give people to read in their science classes for sure.
Awesome. Now let's talk about how your day looks, and in particular, your morning routine. How do you prime yourself for the day? Do you have a specific morning routine that you do?
Yeah, absolutely. I do. I wake up with the sunrise, typically about sort of 6:30 for us in Perth in the morning. In the summer, it can be as early as 5 a.m. And then I'll get up straight out of bed. I go and get my dog and we go for a walk with the rising sun. So we're both out, experiencing the amazing light. And after this, I then exercise. So either I will train resistance training or I will do some cardio, sort of steady state, like walking. And then I have my biggest meal. This is when our body and our gut is most primed to partition the macronutrients you eat effectively. So I will have my steak, my peppers in the morning, maybe a bit of cheese on there as well. and then I'll set about my day. So I've entrained my liver clock, I've entrained my skeletal muscle clock, and I've entrained my master clock by doing those three things before I start work. Then I start work, I do my most sort of tasks that include or involve the most thinking in the morning, because then that is when I'm most alert and awake.